Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel, looking at the automatic writings of early 20th century medium James Padgett. We have quite a sunny day here today, so you might find a few changes in light on that side of the room. Anyway, in last Wednesday's video, we looked at a message James received from his old law professor, Joseph Salyards, in which he explains the ways that negative memories and erroneous beliefs can hold us back in spirit and must be released in order to make progress. The message we're going to look at today is dated May 6, 1915, and is from a former judge, Frank Syrick, who has passed to spirit fairly recently, and now takes the opportunity to confirm that what Padgett had explained to him about life after death is indeed true. As we'll see when we get into the message, Frank Syrick met James Padgett a few months before passing to spirit, and the two of them had the opportunity to discuss what James knew about the afterlife from the automatic writing that he was doing, and about divine love as the way to at-one-ment with God. Frank's soulmate is called Rose. She's mentioned in this message, and as you will see, Frank had been told about her before he passed to spirit. Frank and James met at the home of the Colburns, a couple, I think from memory, father and daughter, who held seances at their home, with the daughter working as the medium. Anyway, the message to James begins as follows. I am here, your friend, Syrick. Well, I first want to say that I am so very glad to have the opportunity to write to you, thanks to that wonderful wife of yours. I tell you, Padgett, that she is a wonder, and you should feel yourself a highly favoured man to have such a soulmate. She is not only beautiful, but so full of love and so wise in the things that pertain to the higher life. Why, she tells me things that I never in all my life thought could exist. And when she shows me the truths of God's love and how beautiful and beyond conception her home is, I can scarcely contain myself. She is helping me so much in my progression. As we've seen in some of the earlier videos, James's wife Helen, who is in spirit, is a member of James's spirit band of helpers, and she often helps friends of his who pass over. James has previously been told that Helen is his spiritual soulmate, as well as having been his earthly wife. By this stage, Helen is a very advanced spirit, and if you look at some of the videos in Series 1, you will find that explained. So having said that James's soulmate wife, Helen, is helping him, Frank Syrick goes on to say, of course, Rose is also, but Rose does not have that great angelic love that your wife has, and is not able to tell me of the wonderful things that may be mine, and the way that I may obtain them. I want to tell you that the most fortunate day of my life was the one when I met you at the Colburns and commenced the investigation of spiritualism that you were seeking to learn. Many times you told me to seek for the higher things and the soul development, and I heard you, but did not know what you meant. I knew that I was not a very bad man, as men go, and would wonder what you meant. Sometimes I got a glimpse of what you might mean, and would ask you, as you may remember, if you thought I was a very bad man. You would tell me no, and that I must give my thoughts to higher things and get the love of God in my heart. This deserves a bit of explanation. We've seen in previous videos that divine love is, if you like, the substance of God, and that it is freely available to every single one of God's children, us, to share in. The way to do that is simply to pray for it. What do we mean by prayer? Prayer is speaking and listening. The important thing is intention. If you want to share in God's love, genuinely want to share in God's love, express that in conversation with God, in whatever way you feel does that best for you. It's not about reciting some traditional form of words, as if they might work as some form of magic spell or incantation. The desire, the longing, the wanting to be one with God is the thing that matters. All you need to do is find whatever way of saying this to God works for you so as to express that desire effectively. If it's there, it doesn't even need a form of words. God will catch the unarticulated thought if it is genuinely there. That said, it can help to take the time to express your thoughts clearly as a way of forming the habit of prayer and of shaping your own thoughts in a way that supports what you are doing. It's also perfectly okay to be unsure about all of this and to try prayer as an experiment. If a traditional form of words helps you to do this, by all means use them, but make them mean something. And accept that you are embarking upon a process that may begin imperceptibly. To begin is important, but having begun, it then becomes important to persevere. Also, don't worry if your ideas of religion have made you wary of prayer, or if your accepted religious teachings have said nothing of divine love being something that each of us can share in personally and individually. The important thing is the relationship you are developing with God. Every relationship is unique, and divine love is its own guidance as to what is best in that relationship. This is not easy to get your head and heart around if it's new to you. So it's no great surprise that Frank Syrick tells James Padgett that he didn't really understand what James was trying to tell him, and that he therefore didn't make much use of this knowledge before passing to spirit. Frank Syrick's words are pretty blunt in this. Well, I did not comprehend what you meant. And when you told me to pray, I did so. Yet somehow I did not understand just how to pray. Now I realize what you mean, and what an awful mistake I made in not trying to learn what you tried to tell me when on earth. At this point in the message, James seems to have asked Frank to tell him about his passing to spirit. Frank tells him, well, when I arrived in Richmond, Virginia, I felt a little sick, but had no idea that I was so near death. In fact, death was not in my thoughts, as I had induced myself to believe that I would live to be an old man. You can imagine my feelings after I had been stricken and was unconscious for quite a while, and then suddenly recovered my consciousness and found myself looking down at my body, all cold and lifeless. I thought it was not my body, but someone else's that resembled me very much, and that I was still in my body. But as I tried to make myself known to my friends who had gathered round, I found that they did not hear or see me. So many people who have passed to spirit have shared that experience of trying to get people's attention, but getting no response and wondering what was going on. Frank continues, I then remembered the description that you had read to me of your wife's passing over, and the conviction came to me that I was no longer a mortal. And to further convince me, just then, Rose came to me and said, Frank, I am keeping my promise. You are with your soulmate, and never again will you return to your mortal life. You can stop wondering what kind of girl your soulmate may be, for now you see her as she really is, and you also feel her arms around you and her kisses upon your cheek and I know that you would not go into that body again for all the world. Oh, I tell you that such a reception, accompanied with such beauty and love, was enough to make a man forget that he had ever been a mortal. And for the time, I forgot that I had. It's interesting that the point at which Frank realizes that he might be dead is the moment Rose appears, because that realization by Frank is the opening she needs to come forward to him. Time and time again, we see that people in spirit do not force things on us, but as soon as there is an opening in our thoughts, they can be there. This is why it's so important to pay attention to our thoughts, because the nature of our thoughts colors the nature of the opening, and therefore the nature of those who might be drawn to use it. This too is a reason to make divine love part of one's nature. So Frank Syrick has had a pretty good welcome to the next phase of life, as he himself acknowledges, saying, "So you see, my passing was not as undesirable as I had thought it would be. I cannot tell you what my happiness was, as I had no doubt about my being a spirit, and thoroughly believed that I had left the earth forever, so far as occupying my body was concerned. I had no desire to return to it, and my thoughts did not turn to things material. My Rose was sufficient for me. She occupied all my thoughts, and my being was wholly with her, and my happiness was a thing no mortal could understand or believe, even if I were capable of telling him." Such beauty and love. Well, I will not try to tell you of it, for I cannot, but only say that when you come over and your soulmate meets you, you will lose your breath and wonder how such a man as you are now could be loved by such a being of beauty. A short time after I had been with Rose, your wife and others of your band came to me, and with them my own dear mother, who was so beautiful and loving to me. I was so happy that I cried with all my heart and soul for joy. Well, such was my passing, and when on earth I had no conception that it could be such. So here we have a man who, by his own admission, has not made much use of the knowledge of spirit and of divine love that he acquired during his earthly life. But we still have the impression of a decent, genuine human being enjoying a welcome beyond even what he had imagined, let alone hoped for. As soon as I recovered my breath, as we say on earth, I made many inquiries about the things that I saw, and which I had wanted to know when on earth. I want to tell you that some things that I heard seemed familiar, and I thought that I had heard them before, and so it was, because in our communications, in our conversations, and in our circle, I had heard them. So you see what a privilege it is for a man to have the opportunity of learning of the spirit world while still on earth. You and Dr. Stone and the Colburns are much favoured in your opportunities to hear of so many of the things that pertain to the spirit life. Dr. Leslie Stone was a close friend of James Padgett, often with him during the automatic writing of the messages, and subsequently responsible for transcribing and publishing many of them. Frank Syrick continues, "I am acquainted with Dr. Stone's Mary. Tell him that she is real, and is certainly his soulmate, as I was his friend and patient when on earth. She is a beautiful spirit, and so good, and loves him with a love that he cannot now understand, but which he will some day. Tell him I am more fortunate than he, because I came first and partook of the love of a beautiful, fine, and loving woman. And his time is coming, but I am more fortunate than he in that I came to my soulmate a little sooner than he will to his. So we have someone who has absolutely no regrets about leaving this earth plane behind. It can obviously feel somewhat different to those who leave loved ones behind in this world, but they too can feel the joy of discovering that life continues. Frank Syrick then mentions having met a First Nation American, an American Indian, as they were called. The language of the messages is of its time, inevitably. Her name is Bright Star, and she has previously communicated through James and been involved with his spirit band. We'll look at a message from her when we get into series 3 of these videos. Anyway, Frank continues, I have met Bright Star, and I certainly was surprised. I thought to meet an Indian squaw, but instead I met a spirit, the most beautiful and bright, with God's love emanating from her whole being. She was glad to see me and reminded me that she was not a stranger, as she had seen me many times in Mrs. Ripple's seances. And she said, then you only knew me as a little Indian girl, simple and accommodating. And I said, Bright Star, you certainly surprised me. I had no expectation of meeting you as such a beautiful and bright spirit. And she said, the love of God makes us all alike. We who have that love are not Indian or paleface or yellowface, but are all the children of God. And as his love is the same unchangeable love, and those who receive it are all that same in their beauty and colour and brightness. His love makes our appearance, and as our souls become more filled with it, we become more like him, and colour and race and previous conditions disappear. Now, what do you think of that? And I tell you that the things I have learned here are wonderful and inspiring. So Frank gets a few surprises in getting to see what people in spirit are actually like, and in getting a visual demonstration of the difference divine love makes to the soul who seeks it. Never forget that this is a process you can embark upon even while living in the body. The soul we really are can be just as close to God here as anywhere. Whether in spirit or upon the earth, it is never too soon to start. Part of the reason for encouraging this is because of the difference it also makes to the process of purging that is required if we have anything in our nature that causes us embarrassment. We looked at this in the last video, 2.5, which is in 2 parts. And Frank Syrick gives us another example of this when he says, well, to continue, after I had lived in this condition of happiness for some time, I saw that my future depended upon my progress. For you must know that I could not go with Rose to her home because she was so much more spiritual than I. I commenced to examine myself to learn what my drawbacks were, and as I continued to make this self-examination, I found that my life on earth, or rather my recollections or memories of that life, were still with me, and that I must do something to get rid of them. Then my conscience commenced to work, and I soon saw myself as I had never seen myself while on earth. And the more transparent my actual self became, the more this conscience accused me of things done and omitted while a mortal. And with these accusations came sufferings. For your wife and my mother told me the way, yet somehow I could not just understand how to find it. And so the days went by, and I suffered. As I continued to pray, for you must understand that I had been praying, ever since I commenced to suffer. All of a sudden, a feeling of peace came to me, and with it, a great love that I had never felt before. And I realized that it was God's love that my Rose and the others had been telling me of. Since then, my sufferings have grown less and less, and my prayers and faith more and more. Oh, how I regret that in my earth life I had not sought this love. How much suffering I would have avoided, and how much more happiness would have been mine. So again, we see that same process of a welcome to spirit beyond anything imagined, followed by the reckoning. The nature of that reckoning depends entirely upon the nature of the individual soul, what it has become as a result of all the choices made along the way through this world. Divine love makes a difference to the kind of soul each of us is, which is why it makes a difference to the choices we make, which is why that then makes a difference to the life that awaits us in spirit. So take Frank's advice, do as he says, not as he did. He concludes this message to James, saying, well, I have written you a long letter and must stop, but before doing so, permit me to say that you have my thanks for the help that you gave me in the short time that we were friends. The few months that we knew one another, I now realize, were the most profitable months to me of all those that I spent in the investigation of spiritualism. So give my love to my friends and keep some for yourself. Believe me when I say I am your true friend and brother, Frank D. Syrick. I don't know about you, but I think that's certainly one of the more enjoyable messages we've looked at so far. It's a very accessible and very human glimpse into someone's experience of starting their new life in spirit. The next video in the Divine Love series will be video 10.6 this coming Sunday, where we'll be looking at a message from Jesus telling of his birth and early life prior to starting his public ministry. It's an interesting message with a few surprises. In the next video in this midweek series, video 2.7, I'll be taking you through a message from a friend of Padgett's we haven't met before, Joe Shellington. And it's another fascinating account of someone getting to grips with his new life in, as he calls it, the land of the living. So I hope you'll join me for those. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it does help to introduce it to others. If you would like to be notified of new videos as they are uploaded, make sure to click on the bell icon. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.